Hello YouTube, how you doing? Today's video is going to be about watermelon, one of my favorites. Now, when I first grew watermelon was in the summer of 2017. I actually grew it in another part of my backyard, and it didn't grow so well where I was growing it. I'm not sure exactly why. I think I might not have been watering it enough, or I don't think I had a controlled area. So whenever I would water the watermelon, it was kind of like on a little slope. If you can look in the distance over there, in the corner of my backyard, there was a little bit of a slope there. So I think whenever I would water the watermelon there, the water would run off the end, and it wasn't getting as much water as it could have gotten. So I had two types of watermelons that I had there. I had one type of watermelon that was the regular watermelon that you're used to seeing, the more circular type that was with the green stripes that you see in the grocery stores and stuff. And that one I planted from seed, because I remember I bought a package of seeds from Amazon. The other watermelon I actually got as a plant from Walmart, and that was the Charleston gray watermelon, which is more of like an oval shaped. It's a light green color. It doesn't really have the stripes that you're used to seeing, and that is the one that I still have with me today. I was able to grow a couple of watermelon from that original plant from 3 years ago, and then now the watermelon that you see behind me growing, those are the great grandchildren, I think, of the original watermelon. So every year when I harvested, after I harvested that watermelon, which I was only able to get probably 2.5 watermelons out of that, because of, I don't know, the land wasn't right over there. What I decided to do the following year was I decided to build a bed for the watermelons. And so I constructed the bed, put some soil in it, have a controlled setting there, just to start the vines growing. Then once the vines do what they do, I just let them go wherever they want. Oh, another thing. One thing that I also realized about growing the watermelons in the corner over there was that they started to spread into the area that the kids used to play. And so what I used to do a lot was I used to move the vines, and I would move them out of the way so the kids could continue to play. But I noticed every time I moved the vines, the watermelons would stop growing, or wouldn't even grow in the first place. So I was like, what is going on here? And that even happened when I first built the box over here and started moving vines on this side. I was like, why is it that every time I move a watermelon vine, the watermelons don't grow, and the ones that I let just be, they end up growing? And I was like, this is really interesting, So I started to think about it, and I think that this is emblematic of life. This is a metaphor for life. And I started to think about it when I'm raising my own kids. I was like, when I allow my kids to be free and make decisions for themselves, and to a certain extent, to do what they want to do what they're passionate about, do what they love, they usually excel in those things like no other. But when I start forcing them to do things that I think might be the right thing to do, or I think that what societal norms may have even imposed on me as the right thing to do, this is when they feel a little restricted. They're not as passionate, and they're very limited in how they do things. They're doing things on a clock or on a schedule, or through force, rather than having the inspiration. I think when you have inspiration and freedom and liberty to do things, that's when you excel the most. And it's the same thing I see with these vines. These vines are like their own little beings. But what I also noticed about the vines is that if I did not want the vines to go to a certain area, I should not wait till it gets there and then move the vine. What I have to do is I have to create an environment for the vines. So if the vine is actually growing in that direction, and then it ends up climbing up on the thing that I created for it, that vine is in essence making its own decisions to how it wants to react, to respond to that barrier that's in the way. But it's making its own decisions, and I'm still playing a role in its environment. So it's kind of like a compromise at that point. So with my own kids, I realize, okay, if I want them to be basketball players, or I want them to be good at math, or I want them to be whatever I want them to be, I have to create the environment for them to be good at those things. I have to create the environment to where people are playing basketball all the time, or watching basketball all the time, or I have to be doing it myself. If I want my kids to read, if I want them to read books, I have to show them that I'm reading books all the time, and then maybe they would like reading. But if I force them to do something that I'm not doing myself, then I think that's you're gonna realize that it's not gonna go very far. And it's the same thing with these vines. I create the environment for the watermelon vines and let them do their thing. Create the environment for your children and let them do their thing. But that's it. You know, my watermelons, I don't have any growing on the vines yet. I got little tiny little buds. If you look closely, this is how they start off. You know, there's a little watermelon bud right there. What happens is they get pollinated by the several bees and all types of bugs that pass through here. Here's a flower that hasn't developed any watermelon bud yet, but I got tiny little buds all throughout the area here. One thing that's also important to note is that you just got to let it grow wild. And even you got weeds and stuff growing around it, let the weeds be, because the weeds have flowers. And sometimes we like to make places look clean and all that stuff, but clean doesn't necessarily represent substance. See, there's an ecosystem here involved, and all the bugs, they pollinate the flowers. They fly from flower to flower to flower. They don't care. They just go from flower to flower and they do their thing. And what the bugs are essentially doing is they're impregnating flowers. They're taking one pollen from one place to another. So the more flowers that you have around, the more the ecosystem will actually work in its benefit. And then you'll start to see more and more bugs being attracted to this area, and more bugs, butterflies, bees, being attracted to the flowers. And then you'll start to see them actually engaging in the pollination process of your watermelon. But if I start cleaning up this whole area and start controlling the environment because it looks pretty to me, or because I think that a vine shouldn't grow over there because it doesn't look nice, or I think that the weeds shouldn't be there because it looks dirty, nature does its thing. And sometimes, you know, nature might not always look pretty, but in the end, there's an ecosystem at play here. Some things that we can't even quantify, some things that might be so intangible that we might not even be able to put a finger on it, but it's actually doing its thing, and it's operating within its own system to make things grow and work. All right, so that's it, guys. Remember, the revolution will not be pesticides.